For this afternoon's session.
Me? We're off. Yeah, I just say we are now.
We're off and running. Right, who's leading this session?
There we go, Mike's racing up.
Mike, welcome, Mike.
Yeah, Cosmos.
And Cosmos, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is a joint effort from Cosmos and myself in terms of preparing this this workshop item. Really, so it relates to three key community facility types. So that's halls, pools, and libraries. Oh, yeah, libraries. How can I forget those? That's important. So now, as I said before, you haven't really had a chance to hear from us through a normal council report. So, and we are going to see a lot of information on the 5th of March. But just in terms, so just to help with your decision making here, we've got Holly Ramsey on the left from the aquatic team leader. We've got Delwyn, who is the community facilities team leader, and Melissa Allison is the libraries manager. So if you have any questions about, I guess, the current operating model of how these facilities are operated, then they're the people to ask about that. But I guess the key direction that we're after here, obviously, is around getting your input on, high levels of service and KPIs for those types of facilities. So yeah, happy to just work through the program, the slides. I guess is probably the best way, Cosmos. Unless you've got any questions before we kick off. So as we say, so that's the outcomes that we after in this section. That you provide us with some direction on preferred level of service and associated KPIs for those three types of council-owned community facilities, and drilling down into some more details. So Cosmos has included some questions in there to get you started. You can obviously look at other factors, other levels of service, other direction that we haven't maybe thought of as we go through the slides. But in terms of particularly looking at the operations of those facilities, how we maintain them, any renewal work, and potentially any growth that we might look to include in the upcoming LTP. So as noted in the report, there's a total of 18 facilities. There's the two pools, Milton and Balclutha. We have 5 libraries spread around the district. So that's Balclutha, Owaka, Milton, Tapanui and Lawrence. And we still have 11 council-owned halls that are generally run by committees at the local level. So during in the you want to speak to this next one, Cosmos, in terms of how the current LTP is formed.
Yeah, I think in the previous session there was a discussion around the living and working strategy, and so the current LTP just reflects the strategy and also reflects the findings from the previous local government acts before they were revoked. So, because as we work through the living and working strategy, we will be updating the outcomes from the strategy that is ultimately adopted into the activity management plans. So as you'll see, the levels of service that we will derive should have a line of sight with the outcomes from the broader strategy that we adopt or the revised living and working strategy. So currently, there are 3 activity management plans, separate activity management plans for libraries, schools, and halls, and we're going to consolidate them into one for the community facilities, so that there is some benefit in that in operational efficiencies and just removing those silos so that we can manage the assets better.
I'm just going back to that first slide there, Cosmos. The well-being's identified in the LTA in 2002. Isn't the current government told us to get rid of them?
When this was prepared, last time round, they were still there. That's just pointing out that's a change potentially, as well as the review of the working strategy, which is what you just talked about.
So through you, Your Worship, and you might want to come in here. One of the comments as we do the living and working strategy, inherent in that is any changes that come from government that we need to take account of. So that'll be an evolving process. At the moment, we've got the direction, as you indicated, that no well-beings, and how that fits with the living and working we'll need to work out as we go forward.
Have they put a different terminology around it, Peter? Because I mean, this is what will come out, I can guarantee.
Yeah.
Instead of being called well-being, they'll use another.
Yay, can you answer that question?
That's actually already been affected in legislation, so they've removed the concept of well-beings from the actual local government act. They reverted back last year to kind of this broad definition of core services, and that does include, to be fair, community facilities, recreational facilities, and things like that. So it does include that, but it's just that, and nothing in the LGA necessarily stops you from still considering well-being. It's just no longer a core mandate of local authorities to actually, it's not something that you are mandated to consider, as opposed to previously when it was. When they introduced this, we all thought the idea was to tie in core services into the rates cap, so that core services will not be subject to the rates cap. That actually hasn't eventuated, so there's a bit of a question of what really was the point of the change.
Yeah. So effectively, you're saying nothing's changed.
Well, it's changing the sense that the government has clearly defined for you that you should, it does not consider the four well-beings to be core services of the council. When they then start looking, for example, when DIA looks at how you kind of apportion your spending, how you apportion your rates, or when they start looking at council activities, they will default to the LGA, which will set out what council's core services are. So if hypothetically, when they're looking at the rates and say, okay, this is too high, blah blah, have you spent on core services? That's when the definition ends.
Yeah. Does this see it creating any issues? Because they're not exactly low price ticket items we're dealing with here.
No, I mean, to be honest, the actual change to the core services is actually less than what we expected, because when they initially said it, we all expected, are they going to get rid of what would community facilities be like, for example? And largely they've retained stuff like, recreational facilities such as pools, and that to be part of the definition. Civic is part of the definition, so civil emergency management is included as part of the definition of core services.
Right.
So they've taken away the broad concept of the well-beings, yes, but they've retained a lot of the, I guess, specific elements. So your scope's narrowed.
So, through you, Your Worship, I just might ask a supplementary then of Yay.
Yep.
Is there any, in the sort of looking over the horizon, any chance that they might change again and be more definitive on well-beings?
So you might be aware that the opposition, from my understanding, was fairly against necessarily moving away from the idea of well-beings, and that's mainly because they think that it is a function of local government. And the question has been raised that if local government doesn't look at the well-beings of their community, who does? The four well-beings. I will say that the general view seems to be at the moment that they're pretty over legislative change every single time there's a change in government. I would doubt that they would immediately try to revert this back, because ultimately I just don't think it wouldn't, I doubt it would be high on the agenda if the government changed to revert this back, because they can work within this program.
Thanks.
Okay, Peter, thank you.
So this is just a diagram to show you where the activity management plans sit in terms of broader strategy documents. Donna was speaking about the infrastructure strategy. That's at the strategy level. activity management plans sit in the operational area. So they sort of operationalize your strategy. That's where the actual details of your work programs, your budgets, and how you finance those activities is defined, including the actual service level of service. That is the full definition of the level of service for each area. So that diagram is just to give you that understanding of all the documents that we're working through in the LTP period and where the activity management plans sit.
Can I just ask a question there, sorry, Peter? District plans. When have we, going forward, I know not right now, but when are we going to start looking at our district plans around our district at some stage? Will it be in this 3 years?
Yes, because it's, but it won't be our district plan. It's the RMA reforms. So it's the work that's happening now to pull together the various district-wide spatial plans and those requirements. So the reform that's occurred does require that regional view of the district plan. So that's why we haven't been doing anything more other than anything that might contribute to that regional view. Yeah?
Yeah, actually we can't, we won't be able to look at our district plan for the conceivable future until they put a stop to the plan stop. So it's, I think the timeline is that you won't be able to start looking at your district plan until you start engaging the regional spatial planning, I believe. So that's, we actually can't, we're prohibited from actually looking at plans at our district plan.
So just in terms of providing that context, there's the 18 facilities that we're talking about here. I mentioned at the start. They're just grouped by the just to help you locate them or reference them by the different community service rating areas. We'll talk about obviously those in a little more detail as we go through.
You're only talking about council-owned facilities, of course.
That's right, absolutely. Next slide, please.
So one of the key outcomes that we're looking for in this workshop today is the level of service that council desires for us to target. If we get good levels of service, we can work through the AMP's activity management plans with a bit more clarity in terms of what we need to do to achieve those levels of service. So this is just an infographic to just show you what we are looking for. So good quality level of service are well defined, they've got objectives, and then they've got a performance measure and a target. So in the upcoming slides, we will have a few suggestions of levels of service that are fully populated, and then we'll ask for additional changes to those ones. The target, whether you want to move it up or down, depending on the level of preference that you have, or create new ones, completely new ones. But this is the framework within which we want to define the levels of service. So we'll start with the service parameter, objective, the performance measure, that means how we're going to measure it, and the target that we're going to be trying to achieve. We can go to the next tab.
So, sort of at the high level, this graph shows the current performance measure for combined for those three types of facilities, so libraries, halls, and pools. And as Melissa liked to point out to me, libraries are top of the pops with 97% satisfied in their latest residents satisfaction survey. So that's pretty good in this current environment. but closely followed really, right behind them is halls, despite, we have a range of halls and, different providing different level of service or different standards. Balclutha Pool is also really high. Milton Pool, as we talked about the other week, maybe not quite so good, and there's reasons for that. So the current weighted average target for those three altogether is 90%, correct? So I guess the question, as Cosmo said, is there any need to adjust that target, or are there any other additional level of service targets that you might want to bring in for those facilities?
Yeah, and this is for the combined community facilities. So for the individual areas, we have a different set of levels of service, but this is just combined for all the community facilities.
Who sets the level of service where it is at the moment? Like obviously the 24 year wasn't that great. It's probably at an all-time low, but who sets the levels of service currently?
We do.
You do.
You do. That's what we're asking you.
Yeah,
today.
yeah, but what's last year's? What was the last time around?
Well,
Give me an example.
that graph is. I don't know if we have the individual ones further on, but that's an average. So we get feedback on pools, on halls, and I keep forgetting libraries. So this is just an average.
Yeah.
Of what we've got through that satisfaction survey, in terms of how satisfied they are with those things. And pure and simply, the target is 90% that we have set ourselves.
Yeah.
And we seem to be generally meeting that.
Right. Have you got an example of a satisfaction survey? Like what sort of questions you ask?
The resident survey.
Resident survey.
Yeah, any resident survey.
Are you? The question is basically, are you satisfied or not satisfied? Very satisfied, I think, with libraries.
We only meet
Halls will
90%
be hard.
once in the last 6 years.
Yeah, well, we know what's dragging it down.
Yeah.
The decision that's been made.
When you look at those halls.
Not the hours.
Consultant fee.
Not the hours of use.
You're right. So the
Closing.
The-
No, my making the point is, Mike, you're asking a question about, we need to adjust the target. We need to understand certain things. Yes, one is, was a decision taken by council to close the Milton Pool after the season? That's correct, isn't it?
a decision was made to consult on that.
Consult,
Yes. Yeah.
because that will make a big difference. If at the end of the day you consult and you remove Milton Pool by closing it, your target can be increased because you're not going to be dragged down by that pool, right? If you are going to continue to have Milton Pool, then you should realistically look to adjust the target, because Milton Pool will just by default probably drag down the level of satisfaction. So that's the considerations. You won't know that until decisions for the annual plan.
This will be for the LTP though,
Yeah.
rather than. So it'll be for the year after.
Yes, but that's the year that the service will be closed, surely. I'm just saying, you're consulting this year in the annual plan, right?
To not open
To not open the
Milton Pool next summer, which would be
27.
anyway.
Can I just say I've never ever had 95% satisfaction before, which I'm really proud of, but I don't know if that's, I don't know why we got such good results last year, because traditionally even back has been lower.
Because you've been awesome, Holly, that's what
Oh,
you're
no,
saying.
I'm not taking it. I'm really happy we got such a good result. But I don't know if it was an abnormal way or that's going to be a trend that continues like that.
You
as
should be
well.
more confident,
I'm proud that we
Holly.
got it. I'm not saying.
The
But
team and
traditionally,
yourselves
what's
have done a
probably
lot.
been around would be lower than that.
And
Just saying.
I have a question too, please, Mike. So we've got these results from the resident satisfaction survey. What sort of, how many people do we generally have to take part in that? Is it good numbers comparatively to who lives here?
So, through you,
I can
Worship.
answer that. So the resident satisfaction survey is done by the metrics that's actually reported is done by an external company, and they blind survey around about 300 residents. So it's always around there. It'll be 300 with 301 or 305. Yeah, and they basically call around and or the cell phones and your phones to actually try results. So it always sits around about the 300.
Right.
Now, people can then also take the survey online as well, but for the control group purposes, only the non-self-selected, so the actual randomized calls are recorded as the satisfaction. So the self-selection doesn't actually come into it. It's reported at the back end of the survey.
Have we ever undergone a bigger kind of survey?
That is the biggest.
It is the biggest.
And when we've talked to kind of the surveying companies, 300 is probably fairly representative for a council of our size.
Thank you.
So what you're saying is that Milton Pool will either, if the construction occurs appropriately, will be into the new pool. So you'd expect a higher level of service. I mean, we've invested in it for that, right? In terms of satisfaction. So the trends should be suggesting that the target should increase.
So through the new, once we get into the new LTP, we wouldn't be asking for feedback on the existing Milton Pool because it won't exist. We'll either we'll have a new pool or almost have a new pool once we get into it. So.
See Mike looking at me, so the new pool is scheduled to be completed by December 2027 at this stage.
So, I mean, the direction they're talking about is saying, do you want to, this is what they're talking about. We can't take all afternoon on each of these individual ones, but they're worth a debate. The backgrounds be had. You either leave it as it is. There's no evidence to suggest you should drop it. So either leave it as it is, or you say, hey, we actually should be increasing it.
More money.
Anyone got any suggestions for Mike?
Leave it as it is.
Leave it as it is, yeah. I think that's a pretty good target to get to.
Oh, look, I'm not one to, you want to put lower targets, it's easier to achieve, and I'm more than happy to meet requirements like that. All right, we move on.
Okay, move on. Yep. So now we're going to talk about libraries, I think. Detail, yeah. So the current things that we monitor for library visits, circulation rate, which I think just means book issues. Is that right? Number of book issues, number of people attending programs, which obviously is sort of directly related to how many programs we deliver, but and also as we talked about, this resident satisfaction score. So if we go to the next one, maybe Peter. So Cosmos has added in some potential some changes that might be able to.
Yeah, so pre-populated this with suggestions that you can go through and say, just tick and say, you're happy with that. If you want to change the targets, if you feel it's too many, because we have got 5 days that we'll put there, it's too many or too little in terms of the number of items to track. It's really just going through, like the first one, library visits, the number of people that the amount of traffic that we handle in the libraries. So that number that we pre-populated with is I think it's just within 10% of the current, isn't it? Yeah. Just 10% below the current number that we have. It's a good metric for you to see how well we are performing. If you want to keep this one, we'll focus on something else.
No, we keep this one, Cosmos. Community hubs are a vital part of council, and this is where we get the biggest survey of all ratepayers that will come in and talk. This is where we get our feedback from the most. And I think every community in our district would not be without the services of and the valuability that these have in our community. And I think going forward, these are going to be the biggest draw cards for our hubs, for our communities.
So, through you, Your Worship, I guess it's probably worth noting that indicative target that we put there of 110,000 is it's not especially ambitious. I guess it's about, as Cosmo says, it's close to where we were maybe a year ago, but we've had a 17% increase growth in terms of library visits across the last 3 years, from 104,000 to 121,600. So we're growing. So you know, that's I guess something to point out, that if we wanted to actually continue to put pressure on and improve the level of service and therefore attract more people to our libraries, then this is the time to do it. But that's I guess is setting us a target, and we're going to need the resources to be able to do that.
What Mike is signalling is that these aren't much different from what we're currently doing, and we are currently subsidising the over expenditure in the library areas in the remuneration side of things, by absorbing it within the total remuneration spend, and the budget for this year in the annual plan doesn't see an increase specifically in that. Mike and I just talked about that, and we might. And so again, we're going to have to try and absorb that. But the point would be the LTP would have to be the time that if you confirm this, then we would be saying we do need a couple or more positions added into the structure and the budgets for the libraries, because we're currently overspending at this existing level of service. And you're already saying we're at 121,000. So we're just highlighting that unless you made a substantial direction change and say, hey, we want to cut library visits by 50%, or you want to do this, or you want to do that, effectively reducing level of service, that's the only way to reduce expenditure in that space, as opposed to the logical increase in some form of expenditure. So that's the message. We aren't doing it at the annual plan process, but if you're confirming level of service, then we just need to confirm the resources attached to it, and that would come through in the LTP.
And our UAGC, what are we paying?
It was in the information you had this morning.
Yes, I know, I'm getting there.
There's a number of them.
127.10.
Not for libraries.
That's library.
Facilities total.
Yeah, but in the UAGC, the library component's 2.5 million.
Yeah.
So through you, Your Worship, just a question for Mike. So if we wanted to increase the target of visits, that's going to take more resources.
Yep.
So if we wanted to increase it to 120,000, do we sort of have an idea of, is it a more labour unit or?
Well, I'm sure you wish it. We're currently at 120,000, and
Yes.
I would say, and Melissa might like to comment, but I would say we are straining with that, struggling with that. That is a challenge.
Okay.
Yep. So
Under current staffing.
under current staffing levels.
Right.
Yep. So to maintain that, or even we're increasing our numbers anyway.
Yes.
Right. So that's just, there's other factors at play there. So but it comes a time when reach sort of a peak, and people will be not that happy with what we're providing, because it's just, we can't support it.
Yeah.
So short story, yes, that's more people basically, but also potentially more books, more stuff.
Okay, well, if, Your Worship, if we try to increase the visits to 130,000, would that be inefficient for one more staff unit across the use?
That's slightly more ambitious than what we have there. So that's.
So what you'd probably want to do is if there's things you want to change, you would actually ask the team to go away and work out what the cost would be to give effect to that. Yeah, that would be the information you would consult on.
Well, that's probably where I'm heading to.
Just, you can I just ask though, when we're talking about the total costs and you're talking about adding more labour in the next few years, the total library costs will rise with the impact of the Milton library component, the capital costs, and potentially also Tapanui. So we're looking at quite a substantial increase in library costs. Adding
Certainly Milton, yes. Tapanui, I guess the concept is that we wouldn't own that building anymore, so the operational costs would actually decrease. There might be other additional costs, but obviously in terms of if we're going to fund the capital works, but OPEX would decrease.
It would be higher speed.
Yeah.
Operational.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It would be.
But they're going up.
And I guess the other thing to say is that, look, it's not just about that first row there. That probably you should probably look at those other 5 items in composite, in terms of as Steve said, in terms of the cost to deliver a greater level of service. But we just need to know what it is you want to target on, really.
Just carrying off on that customer satisfaction, you got a 95% score previously. Why you're looking to build a new library, or running 2 new libraries. Why on earth would you want to let that slip to 80%?
Well, this is the opportunity for councillors to put forward a different target. It is fairly modest, absolutely. So.
I haven't seen them ever drop below 95%.
Well, leave it, especially if you've got if you're putting new facilities in, you're backing us out.
Stick with 95?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. And do we want to go 130 for that first one as a starting point?
Well, I think what's the cost difference going to be between 110 and 130 to achieve that 130?
Well, it's at least
Or
one.
you're going to achieve it without any extra?
Well, they're 120 now, aren't they? 121.
It's at least an additional FTE, Melissa, isn't it? Potentially 1.5 or something.
Yeah.
Well, you're currently short at least one, and then you got Milton coming on stream, and you expect to have a much higher level of usage from the facility that you've got here. That hasn't been built into the target. It's just showing general growth of existing facilities, which will drop off, this year and next year because of the smaller space of Milton, right? But it should go back up. You would expect it to grow as a consequence of the investment you've made in a top-notch facility. And similarly with Tapanui coming on stream, you'd expect that to have a higher level as well. So, I mean, the investments, the structural investments being put in place for increased level of service.
Yeah.
So it just means that really it would seem to go anti that to reduce the level of service. Yeah. So that's the sort of where we're heading in terms of that side.
So, Your Worship, would it be prudent to have a bit of modelling on this, because we just sort of go, oh, I think should do that, based on a usage number, and we don't really know the impact, do we? And then we've got to trade that off against the well-being, I suppose.
Yeah, but I guess from my understanding, this is a chance to look at things like this in terms of what we want to deliver.
Yeah.
As a starting point, right? And
yeah.
You're right. Then we go away. And so if we can get something like this today, that's good. And then we can go away and go, right, how do we? I'll be talking to Melissa. How do we deliver that? What's that going to cost? And that's stage 2, right?
Okay, right. Well, there you go. That's easy.
Yeah. I suppose it's a bit. I mean, we're only measuring it against what you've got there in terms of existing. Right? It's a bit hard to then go, well, let's put it 200,000. I mean,
yes,
that's like pie in the sky suggestions that it might come from something. Why can't we just take the principal viewpoint that we've invested in this, we've signalled and are actioning investment in the infrastructure to increase library level of service? That's what we've done. Therefore, we should take as a principle that level of service is increasing, and we should try to match that level of service to the infrastructure investment we just put in place. Having regard to what you're currently already doing. And so is that sufficient of a principle to be reinforced too? I would have thought that's more value, and you can look at some evidence and data and make some extrapolations and forecasts on that basis rather than just pull something out of the air and then say match it against the dollars, right?
Yeah, but that leads into that fourth one there too. I would like to see some more work done on just what those numbers would be, exactly as you're talking about, because, and just whether it may not necessarily be affordable. Leading into the one down below, program attendance, 10,000 programs, I probably need a bit more explanation on what that's about and whether that's value for money, especially on a staffing level. Yeah, there's elements to,
Is the increase in numbers of libraries and that leading to an increase in revenue?
No. Library doesn't generate revenue. It's ancillary to the activity, and if you look at the funding policy, revenue funding policy, I think recovery on library stuff is something very, very low because you wouldn't expect it to be recovering. It's a service rather than something that you get fees and charges for. You can change that, but the principle of making it available to everybody, charging for it, goes against that principle.
Target's 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if it achieved that.
I thought we were told last time there's basically no library in the country that charges. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think the 5 to 10% has just been historical, and I doubt we've been recovering anywhere near that side of things. And to be fair, moving forward, you probably should make that more accurate. What actually recovery is.
So, Your Worship, Steve, so what you talked about before, is that something we can tell Mike and his team and Cosmic go away and, because we seem to be stuck here. We're not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Otherwise, you're just making something up.
Yeah. So I like that idea.
I mean, I think we should model a lot on the existing where we're going. This question around additional hours up or down, that's a valid question that you can make at different times, right? Because it doesn't change the fact we're paying for the structures, but we ourselves have already made decisions at times around closing things, like the Milton Pools being closed, for example. So at different times, you can make different decisions around impacting on operating costs. But as a starting point, you should be looking first of all as this is the ideal that we should be applying to the facilities we've invested in, and then you can always come back or relook at what that's going to be as a result. And that. So don't be we're doing these in the first instance. We've still got to engage. We've got to do other bits and pieces. So I would think that you'd be aiming for that aspect as a principle, rather than trying to say determine reduction or whatever at this point. We are only engaging.
So what I'm hearing, just to confirm, is that we would do some more work on, look at modelling the existing trends in terms of what we're doing, take into account the changes that are coming, particularly Milton and Tapanui. Look at other factors like, for example, longer opening hours and so on and so forth. Come back to you with, and maybe broken down into those different categories with a total in terms of the cost impact and rates impact.
Yes, because we're only engaging on it. We're building it up to engage.
Sure. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Next. Do you want to talk about condition assessments?
Yeah. So this one is just again seeking high level direction so that we can put some more work into coming up with a program that includes condition assessments, and then come back with some costs and impact information for consideration in the draft AMP. So is this something that you would consider to for us to have a condition assessment program for the buildings that house our libraries, so that it ties into the 3-year cycles. It's just a good practice because it then informs the upcoming LTP cycle maintenance and renewal programs. But we previously didn't have this as a cyclic program. It was just once off that was done 2020. So again, because of the amount of work that needs to be done to develop this kind of a program, it's good to have the direction now so that we know where to put our efforts.
Would the program be undertaken in-house or would it be contracted out? How would it work?
So we develop the program that we want to do, identify the assets based on their criticality, and we'll put them in different categories and then allocate the different, some of them are done 3 years, some of them 6 years. But we have to outsource the actual condition assessments to engineers to do.
So at the moment, Cosmos, we actually haven't got anything in place for our buildings, have we? So that's hence, when a leaky roof thing happened, all of a sudden we had to do a new roof.
So we do have a report that was done in 2020. So we still have some information based on that. Some work has been done based on that report, and that gives us an insight of what's outstanding. We've had some work that was identified as part of the renewal work. So when builders went in to do some work, they discovered some other work that needed to be done. So it's not ideal to discover work like that. So having a program that informs you, you can reduce the frequency. Let's say if you prefer to have a 6-year program, but it must be built into your LTP cycle so that it informs the upcoming maintenance and renewal programs.
Quick question for you, Cosmos. So all the maintenance and stuff that was done, identified in the 2020 report as assessment, has it been completed?
No.
No.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get worse then, isn't it?
Some of the work has been done, so it's prioritized based on the agency of the work, and also based on the operational requirements from the operations team.
So effectively, the stuff that doesn't get maintained is only getting worse, isn't it? So.
I mean, there has been progress. Balclutha has had significant amount of work done, and Milton is being replaced, right? And Tapanui, which was another one high on the list, is being replaced. So we're only talking a couple others in the scene. So there has been, if you think about it, there has been quite a bit of work done.
But we still need to be allowing for maintenance, ongoing maintenance, for the two that haven't had anything done.
Really, Lawrence.
Lawrence.
WEC is not our building, we don't have to worry about that. So it's really only Lawrence and Balclutha.
We talking
the two will be brand new.
Are we talking the building or are we talking the inside, the shelving and counters? And
there's another slide next when we've got to talk about Balclutha. Just the principle of doing sort of condition assessment work probably makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
We actually do it, so that we don't get in trouble over Lawrence.
No. It's prudent to do it. Oh, certainly, depreciating asset. We've got to keep ahead of the game.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just going to confirm what Steve said. So last year and the year prior, we completed a whole re-roof of Balclutha Library and earthquake strengthening as well. So that library has had a significant amount of capital investment put into it.
And there was a reason for that, apart from the fact that the roof was going to fall down and people were going to get sick. But that flows into the next slide. So I can introduce the next slide when we do that. So one of the decisions we took around that was the issue about what do you do about Balclutha? Because the assessment and all the work associated with that says, hey, you do need to consider what you're going to have with Balclutha because it's going to fall around your ears at some point, not too far away. Originally, we had it in the LTP for replacement. Then there was the suggestion at an LTP of why aren't we working with Tupoma and that side. We did the homework around that. We did the investigations around that and came out that that was not going to be able to be, that would not work. And so that wasn't on the table. And then we looked at the Milton replacement with the $90 million for the swimming pool and the library. The good deal we got with West Otago and Tapanui, that's a really good deal and where that's moving to. But the thought that Balclutha was just going to be able to add another 19 or let's say $12 million project or 10 to 12 mil, because it's going to be pretty big in that sense, on top of all the big things that we've been doing, that the decision was taken that we were just not going to consider that, and certainly in the short term, and we were going to shove any consideration of that into another LTP. So it was outside the 10-year program. We did that, and that's why we were concentrating on what do we need to do to Balclutha to keep it going. But the problem still remains: what are we going to do with Balclutha and that? And so when we talk about this, we say, do we look at a new Keystone building? That's that multi-million-dollar, many millions for that, and or reconfigure available facilities or expand the footprint on the current site, and that. So there's various looks at that around what's the most efficient way of dealing with it, unless you think that the district can handle another project like Milton, and that, which we didn't feel that the district, particularly losing the waters and that, is going to be able to manage another big one. Then it really lends itself to what do you do with the existing building, and is the most efficient way of doing it expanding the footprint on the current site, for example, because it does need a larger footprint for the size of what it's delivering. There is space within we have got space, we've got land adjacent to it, and so the viewpoint was in this LTP we should be at least looking and starting to investigate those alternatives. These aren't things to happen in year one. You're not replacing this in year one or anything, but it's about building that alternative as opposed to thinking of it as a brand new building. I just thought the realities of the situation was that we weren't going to be able to go there with Balclutha, and we needed to look at solutions with the existing facilities. That just sort of made sense at the time, but we're looking for a confirmation of your thinking around that side of things. At the end of the day, the district can't afford new buildings across the board all the time.
Well, sure way to find out would be to go out and consult the public. Ask them what they want. You'll get a straight answer then.
Just a question maybe for Mike, Your Worship. So we're talking about the Carnegie Library building, aren't we? Okay. So do we know the NBS on that building?
Yeah, the building's fine. It's
The Carnegie Library bit's not.
Yeah, correct. So we did earthquake strengthening of the building, but the Carnegie bit we only managed to do the renewals work that we could do at the time, because it's acknowledged that the Carnegie, the historical part, is a little bit risky.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's right.
I could probably handle doing having a review of the options, having a look at those, what's suggested there, and then make the decision as to where it sits in the long-term plan. I mean, if it can be renovated, then maybe it gets done earlier. It has to be renewed, then way down the track. I could handle having that done.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so I guess the previous question also relates in terms of the condition assessment. We'll have a better understanding of what the current building looks like, any issues that might remain, and that will help that process.
Yes, but then also alternative options if.
Sure.
Yeah. So ideally, it could be renovated, expanded.
Yeah, because one of the things that was important was that we've had studies done, as part of the work that we're already done as part of the work for moving to Topoma and all those sorts of things around what was needed. And it's clear that the existing space isn't sufficient for the town of Balclutha. That was an important finding. So the building we might have done enough work for the building itself, but we would need to be considering, expanding the footprint, which is achievable as part of that process.
Can I ask, when was it built, the Carnegie piece? You know?
So it's the Carnegie piece.
Yeah. Pre-1900? Post? Because it changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Oh, it's only the
1914.
Yeah.
So, okay.
1814. 1914.
1914.
With £1,000 grant.
Yeah.
But the thing you got to remember is that because of the land we have available, and that it could be a totally different configuration with a different entrance.
Yes, no. Where I was going with that is if it's pre-1900, there's a whole sort of lot of heritage New Zealand component comes into it, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's one of only 2 Carnegie libraries still in operation as a library in New Zealand.
Okay. Well, I would agree with Councillor McTamaney, like his suggestion. So.
Is that enough direction?
Sorry?
For that, you guys? Yeah. Cool. So we'll go on to the easy subject of halls.
So this is lucky Delwyn, lucky she gets this one.
We'll give you the easy ones after lunch, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So
Yes, where is he?
Jules has just pointed out that you've already talked about divestment today. So and that is the very next slide. So it's okay, don't panic. But just before we get there, I hope this is a reasonably simple one, and maybe we don't even need to touch on it. But again, we've got the 80% target. Maybe I think we were at 95% in the most recent one, so we can bump that up again. If you like, if you instruct. 90, 95, any takers? Right, all right. Noting that, as I said before, some of our halls are in various states of disrepair or disrepair. Okay, which relates to the next slide. So I can't recall exactly, this has been worked on by Delwyn and Cosmos in terms of the 11 remaining halls in council ownership. Just a very broad assessment of their condition as we understand it, and also the usage ranging from 0 at Moneymore through to likes of Owaka, which is obviously has really good usage. So that just, I guess, by way of context, we could talk to you for an hour or two, probably, couldn't we, Delwyn, about the issues and state of different halls. But hall divestment is the current policy. So that is something that there has been some work done previously. So maybe shoot to the next slide. Actually, thanks, Peter. So there has been some work done on that. We have yet to actually divest one, but we do have some front runners in that area. And we're certainly looking to focus on that now that we have a more coordinated community services department. So, but there are some options, I guess, that you might consider, and possibly we can go back. Sorry, Peter. If you look at the range of condition and usage, do we want to just stick to that policy? I guess is the key question. Apply that across the board, or do we want to get a little bit more specific, or look at horses for courses, as opposed to some of those different halls? I guess is really the. And then if we do want to do that, and then there's various options around that, of course, in terms of how we actually do divest from Moneymore, for example, which probably as a building has not a lot of value. Would that be fair, Delwyn? It's last legs through to some of these other halls which are in really good nick. So,
sorry, team, could I just ask? The divestment policy's been in place for something like 6 years, I think.
I think 20 odd years.
Is it? Yeah, well, it was reaffirmed, I think.
Yeah, it was reaffirmed.
Yeah. And so if we haven't divested anything yet, even though that was the policy, can anyone explain why we aren't able to divest or haven't been able to divest anything? Because it's important if you go, we want to divest, well, are we just going to continue with no progress, or do we look at other alternatives as a result?
It's tricky because they are all different, and you're looking to. I guess the primary concern from the hall committees is, well, what are we getting here? Are you giving us a lemon? Particularly if there's seismic issues, so they're a bit nervous around that. So I think, but in the meantime, I guess they've continued to deteriorate, some in particular, and to a point where there are a number there, probably the top three, where there's not really not to be honest, not a lot of hope for those halls going forward.
So we can't just shut them.
I was going to say that last time we had this discussion, it was
Yeah.
around the Kai pool, and council said, we are not going to operate this anymore. If you want to operate it, you operate it as your community.
Yeah.
There are about 15 to 20 other halls that are run by committees that get grants, and do get grants from council, not all of them.
Yeah.
But we haven't actually said we're not going to fund it anymore. We've just said, we think this should be divested. Would you like to do this? And we've kept funding it. If you look back up in our presentations from this morning, you'll see how much each year we're funding those halls. We might give a community hall $1,500, but the Clutha Valley Hall, we're probably about 24 grand a year, which is similar to the likes of the Clinton Hall and those other ones as well. So there's really part of this LTP, you could decide we're actually going to make some decisions on which ones we're going to keep funding and which ones we're not. And that then puts the decision over to the community. And you might get a lot of pushback from the community on that. But
I understand that, but there's still a lot of halls out there. I mean, yeah, we've gone past horse and cart stages now. Dunrobin, the hall is gone.
demoed.
Yeah, and I think, I won't say it, but I think there'll be another one that will shortly too. And we just can't keep them all going. And they either want them for something and they've kept them going, or, helped with it, but just to see them sadly just sit there and rot away when they could have been sold and someone could have turned them into a home or something else.
To answer your question, I mean, I think we're pretty positive, aren't we, Joel, that we could, we're not going to do all of those in a year, but that we would, if we have a focused effort, that we would be able to, divert one way or the other, at least one or maybe a couple every year going forward. And that might be as simple as just closing them and maybe getting rid, if that's that's maybe the easy option. You might keep the land because often it's gazetted reserve.
Yeah.
That can be put to other purposes, through to other options for those more high level service halls, which might include a full divestment a bit along the lines of Clinton. So,
And we've got like $8,000 sitting there that's getting spent on money more that's not being used at all, and that's people's rates money.
And would it help?
Levels Flat is actually going through the process now, aren't they? They're seriously thinking of their options, but there's sort of compounding interest in that the local church hall and church is up for sale, which if it is sold to someone who isn't willing to let them use the hall though without any sort of thing. I think we've got to be a bit harder on it and push it, really do, because as you say, that deteriorating and not getting the Levels Flat hall probably, when it says the usage is low, I'd say it's zero. No.
And I mean, do we want to spend money on, a community saying, oh, well, we want the hall now, but you do the roof, you do this, and bring it up to this thing, because that's what's going to happen with some of these older halls. And I mean, yes, there's great history on these halls, and I don't doubt that, and we've all got them in our districts, because like I said, every little community has their own one, plus like your church halls. I can't tell you how many there is, and even just Tapanui itself is quite amazing, but then sadly all the churches have been sold too now, so yeah, I don't know. But I still feel that we need to actually just make that decision. It's time.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. Is that some of those, the two biggest halls here are probably going to be the stickiest, aren't they? Clutha Valley and Awaka. Well, they have been in the past.
could be.
Well, we've gone round and round with Closer Valley, and basically the thing there for divestment is nobody's sure what the true cost of earthquake strengthening will be. Who's going to be responsible for it? They don't want to take that on. There's a group of them that could be open, and they've got ideas for renovating, but they probably couldn't get a consent from council if they took it on to do something. So, and a whacker of Dane's been here before and said the committee, it's a well-used tool, as you say, and good nick. I think, well, why would we want to run that? It's getting well run.
Yeah, I think there's just a process to run through.
Yeah.
You know, and I just don't think that it's ever been really followed through. And
I think it was one of the first meetings here. And yeah. This whole divestment discussion come up. And,
I think the issue with like Owaka was we went down there and questioned and tried to get agreement about the divestment aspect, and basically what it was that they were worried that the community was going to be lumbered with an increased cost that the committee has to fund, and there was no commitment from council to increase the grant, for example. So there was a risk associated with that, right? So they've got a system where we're funding at the moment. There's good relations now around what that maintenance is and things like that. And so they're comparing that to, well, now we're going to be responsible for quite a big deal. It's quite a big haul, well used. A lot of risk attached to that side of things from the community perspective. And that's the hurdle we couldn't get over. And that's the hurdle we're going to continue to have around, if they had a choice, why would they take it? And that's why that hasn't happened in Owaka, right? And yet it's a good standard of haul, and you'd think it would be primed to hand over to the community and let them do that. But that's the financial risk that attaches to it for them.
Well, your big financial risk is insurance.
Yeah.
For anybody. And I mean, when you're running a haul, as you well know, or a community centre, there's like 30 grand a year straight off, not more.
But
That's what
sorry, part of the funding agreements that we have had with halls where it has been divested like Kotangata is we pay those fixed costs for insurance and those other things. So that can be drawn into the agreement. That shouldn't be insurmountable.
Right. Peter, do you mind going to the next one?
I mean, that's what they do.
But an example though, the Watahuna Hall, because this happened 3 years ago, council sent the staff member around. I had to go and attend the meeting with the minimal hall committee, saying about the divestment. But the Watahuna Hall is a total opposite example. They've actually got quite a substantial amount of money sitting there in depreciation reserves, and the hall's in really good nick. But why would they want to take it over with everything else that comes with it? Because the rural bases are getting shorter on volunteers. So it makes more sense that the council retain it in that situation. All's in good nick, money in the bank, total opposite. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So, Your Worship, Cosmos has put it quite nicely here in that middle question on the slide there. So at the moment we have a policy which is to work through a divestment process. We've made minimal progress, but that's our policy. Could we support a phased approach that guides us as staff if that preferred option doesn't progress? So that looks like us coming back to you to say, okay, let's say we go through that process, we can't get it across the line for whatever reason. What are the options? What would that look like? So that's something we can look through.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to get hard regardless, isn't it? Like, there's going to have to be a line drawn in the sand and decisions are going to have to be made. Like these ones in here that are in poor condition, what's it going to cost to bring them up to average or good condition? And then consult the community and say, well, this is how much it's going to cost you.
We wouldn't like to do that.
Yeah.
Poor condition, it's just not worth it, is it?
Yeah.
Low usage.
So what are you
So
asking?
take it over or we're shutting it down.
Yeah, so what you're asking us then on that statement then is make a decision.
Or
Shut it or...
For consultation.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. Ask the communities.
Consultation, the three at the bottom of the list should be consulted to divest them or
Yeah.
bulldozers or whatever. But I'm sorry, it's from a bygone era.
Yeah.
You've got to get past that. And then The other ones with medium usage or better, you look at them individually, don't you, over a period of time, and work out whether it's viable for the council or the community to run them.
Is that enough that you need?
Yep.
Something you
Do that. Good, thank you. Okay. So we'll talk about that. Operations. I think we can probably skip that.
Were we looking at any rating reviews around the
One thing we did discuss this morning was whether we align things like swimming pools and halls. So they're either all funded like community services or all funded as a community grant. At the moment, there's a mix and match across between pools and halls, community centres. So that's probably something that's worth considering, and it may be just as tidy to take the hall grants and put them all into the community services rate. So they're all funded consistently, like these halls are funded, which is 50-50. So that would bring you back through the rating side of things.
We just thought we'd jump into that question because we did discuss things this morning, and we think that might be something for the reviews that we're doing.
So that's a yes as well.
Yes, we're doing a review.
Yep. Oh, good. So next slide, please, Peter. So that's the current maintenance and renewal program for halls.
Still on halls, Peter.
Still on halls. I don't know if we need to look at that given the previous discussion. Probably not. Okay, we can skip, and probably the next one as well, we can probably skip because we're going to be building any new halls or but I guess the only question there is that has come up from certain areas is around the use of some halls as community-led centres during natural hazard events. And just, I guess that's just something to consider as part of that other work, I suppose, in terms of the importance of those facilities.
There's a couple of them are lucky to be standing over with the events.
It's not really case by case.
Sure, okay, yeah.
Bottom three,
Just where it there. Yeah.
Okay. Right, that's enough on halls. Holly.
We'll go from
Talk about pools.
frying pan and fire.
So the current KPIs for around pools are again pool usage, and you'll see some, or you've seen some of that information already. That Balclutha is definitely increasing in terms of user numbers. Milton is decreasing. Pool availability, which is something that obviously sometimes outside of our control, but generally Balclutha in particular is open most of the time. Affordability and customer satisfaction, which also rate pretty highly. So then if we skip to the next one, and again, Cosmos has added some, I guess, similar discussion as for libraries.
So just like the discussion for libraries,
yes.
Council can discuss as much as you want on this one. The suggestion might be to apply the same principle we applied to libraries, which was we should be applying the level of service on the basis of full usage of the new facilities we're building, the two facilities, Balclutha and Milton, including even the question around all year round, because you're better off building that to start with to see what that looks like from an engagement perspective and making decisions that don't allow you to go the other way about cutting that and saying you're only going to have half a year. So it's there for engagement because you're talking about LTP engagement. This isn't consultation. This is the engagement process for delivering an AMP, asset management plan. But my thinking, the same as the libraries, is you could throw things out of the air. You could debate whether it should only be, it's designed to be going all year. The question is, will it go all year? But at least you should see the figures and the consequences of what that full level of service would be. So that's what's brought back in the draft AMP sense.
Yep.
So then you can debate that and see whether that's a result. That would be one way to cut through that one and do. Luckily, we had the good discussion around the library.
Don't need to repeat all of that.
Yeah.
Good.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree. 100%.
Everyone else happy with that?
Okay, geez, we're getting there.
Everyone else happy with that? You ladies? Excuse me, Michelle, you girls happy with that?
You're just finding out how much it costs for a swim.
$9.20 in Dunedin.
It's written here in the paper.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he's happy with what Steve was just talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
You can't even, you didn't know what he said, did he? Hey, come
I
on.
did so. You're listening.
$20 a
All
swim,
right, next please. Peter, just about there.
On that.
So this one again is more Cosmos question around the condition assessment program for pools. I probably don't need one in Milton at this point, but yeah, potential for another one, a repeat of that. Clutter, is that right?
Yeah, so I take it some principle applies, like your position is the same for the pools as well. We'll come back with a program that's appropriate for the condition of the building, the particular the pool building. And then with the new building in Milton, we'll come up with it in the next cycle.
Yeah. Bit of a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
There's only a couple of pools
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
The last slide was just on growth, which was sort of covered off. Shouldn't. And that is us.
Gee, you overperformed.
As always.
Hey, well, thanks for that, Mike and Cosmos.
Team.
And the team, the support crew down the back there. Oh, Joseph, is it getting cold in here again, or?
It is.
No, it's put on auto job. Because it went to 25 degrees.
You're an evil.
Right, where we at?
An evil woman, Michelle.
Stakeholder
I
engagement.
reckon that they should just.
Rachel know when the.
Excuse me. Stakeholder engagement, session 7. Let's get it over and done with. Okay, we're actually doing all right, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're doing all right.
We had a few hiccups this morning, but we're caught back up.
Well, who's delivering this?
I'll start from me, and Steve will join in at different points. So, as noted in the paper, the aim is really just to establish some initial directions in terms of LTP stakeholder engagement. And there's a number of parameters that we try and achieve when we're looking at stakeholder engagement going forward. Obviously defining the stakeholders, which we'll do some work on shortly. Early engagement is always better, and that's part of the conversation we'll be having in terms of staging our engagement over the next 16 months. Engagement isn't just engagement's sake, it really needs to be fit for purpose. We've got a limited budget. We need to make sure we get value for our money, but at the same time meet our both best practice needs and our statutory needs in relation to engaging with the community. We need to be transparent. There's a lot of benefit, I think we all understand, in the community knowing what's going on before conversations occur that aren't based on fact. Clearly, we need to be aligned with key issues. It's our conversation earlier this morning about living and working, and already covered cost effective. So, in terms of where we're going, or possibly going now, we've got a window of opportunity between now and August to do pre-engagement with identified stakeholders. The aim there will be defined by what we want to do, the parameters we just touched on, and that lets us evolve what we want in our activity management plans. So there'll be engagement going on in that regard. There's general engagement, which we can talk about on issues of importance to stakeholders generally, outside activity management plans and infrastructure and strategy. And then towards September, October, that's where the pointy end comes with finalising those strategies, financial, infrastructure, activities management plans supporting them. And then we go into a process of getting ready by the end of the year, which is a bit earlier than last time, for our statutory engagement with the view to, by the end of the year, having a formal consultation update. You might recall last time, if you were part of the process then, that that was not achieved until towards the end of February. And we also were running a parallel process with, because of the nature of the legislation at the time, a audit process, which was not a formal audit process, but it was important to do, and that had to do with the legislation of the day, with changes that were occurring. This time round, we have to do it's a formal process of consultation audit, in order that that document is considered by our auditors to be accurate and appropriate in terms of the legislation to go forward to the public. So that consultation would basically occur, say, around February, March, timelines to be confirmed. So that's what we've got in front of us. The purpose of this session, in terms of similar to what we did session 4 on living and working, is to, in part 1, which we'll use a couple of wall posters I've put up since, and they're marked in red, session 7. Basically, one is about the themes that we might want to add on in terms of engagement that might not have been covered in the living and working themes. An example might be, it was touched on by one person in the councillor in the previous session, our engagement with the primary sector, for instance. If it doesn't lend itself to the living and working, maybe we should put it there, or maybe it's an extra theme that we should be considering. And that'll go part and parcel with the second part, which is our stakeholder identification. Now, that side is the engagement themes, which is a big blank sheet with post-it notes waiting for it. And on the other side are two sheets, one of which is the first sheet, part one, is the sheet which basically lists the examples in the agenda paper with a number of suggestions as to possible stakeholders. And similar to what we did with the session 4, what I've suggested there is if you could indicate your thoughts in similar columns on those stakeholders as to whether you think they're important, any comments you've got to make, and what priority you might want to give them. So that's to kickstart the process. And the second sheet, part 2, is just an open question. Who else who's not on that list who we need to add in? You can either write it in or put post-it notes. And if you could give a priority, that would be useful. So I might leave it there and ask Steve if he's got any additional comments before we go to do the task. And also, before I actually do that, is everybody comfortable with that or got any questions with that?
So Peter, instead of making them in different parts, basically, so that we split up the council, they can just not all situate themselves in front of any particular one. Both things can be done at the same time, right? So
yeah.
If the councillors can think about any engagement themes using the post-it notes, and then also switch across to this one over here, which is around the particular stakeholder identification, and or additional ones. That way we just get it both done at the same time.
Yep.
And as simple as that. So just get some viewpoints from you as council.
And then once we finish that, we'll just have it'll probably be a fairly quick process just to recap, similar to what we did last time.
Yeah. So maybe it takes a little bit of time, maybe 15 minutes.
Yep. Okay,
that would fit. I'm still doing fine.
So the stakeholder list that we have here is what we use currently?
No. It was built from first principles by talking to a few people. It was meant by way of example. It's not meant to be comprehensive.
Right.
We want your thoughts here to keep it on track.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, if you tick every single one, then that's obviously quite a big task for engagement with things. So it's about getting an idea of what you think is like. If you're going to engage on the long-term plan, these are the ones we should really be focusing on, because everybody will still have an opportunity to be consulted.
Yep.
This is the pre-engagement where is it valuable for us to talk to stakeholders as part of developing the LTP? Which ones, if that's the case?
So that's sort of an open-ended question, really, isn't it? Which ones do we think?
Yeah.
Favourite to you?
Because are we going to get quality feedback from a certain group? What's the expectation around there? So, for example, we might consult with, I don't know, let's say Paul Stewart, and they might have something with their own realm, but in general, would they be interested in what we're doing over and above outside being a normal rate?
Yeah, but that's the instance where you may not think that you need to specifically do it. But the other question might be, well, then if think about forest and bird, for example, right? And the point being, is it worth, from the LTP perspective, pre-engaging forest bird? Same with potentially DOC, and there are a few others like that, right? So, but those are the ones that you can actually say, yeah, I think we should, or no, well, we should leave it for consultation.
Couldn't we just leave that to me?
He's doing it anyway.
I think you're an inclusive mayor, aren't you, Mayor John?
I think some people best keep their thoughts to themselves.
Yeah. You've got a list of, there's quite a few ministries there.
Yeah.
How obligated are we to bother with them? Some policy wonk in Wellington's just going to put a standard thing in. I mean, we've seen the waffle from Health New Zealand and that
Yeah.
before. I mean, do we really need?
Well, that's the thing, we're asking.
We're not obligated to.
No, there's
no.
no statutory obligation to consult with anybody. There's a statutory obligation for the consultation document and that side of it. We're talking pre-engagement to get, and so the thing that you should be looking at is, is there anything that stands out here of any of these stakeholders or any other one that you might think of that actually there's value in us having pre-engagement discussions that might then help us with the LTP.
Like housing.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about living and working strategy and a few other bits and pieces, so you're aware of the components of what the LTP is going to be. And so you might say, well, actually, this outfit might be really worthwhile pre-engaging. Right? So it's not a tick box, so you need to do this just because it's an entity. It's really just simply, is it worth putting our effort into pre-engaging? Because everybody still gets a chance to be consulted.
And I might just add there, in terms of where you've got national versus closer to home bodies, regardless of whether it's private or public, we'd be mainly looking at people who have an interest in our patch.
All right, so what do we say, 10 minutes? 15? Okay. Maybe less, but sooner we get it done.
If you're all sat down, we can get back.
So it's 1, 2, and 3 over there.
You'll be doing age consideration.
We're still streaming, of course.
Oh, there you are.
I could tell by this.
Is that what you put here?
Yeah, we're in the same.
Yeah, you and Simon.
Yeah, they're not on there.
Yep.
Well, not always, because sometimes.
Yeah.
Simon, speak for me.
Hey?
Introduce.
Yeah,
Yeah, put it.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe. No, just so you know, you're right. I so we can say something. Let's say that. The only reason I think
All this is.
Yeah. Basically, so these ones are copied.
Yeah, you can do
I'm not saying search by source.
I think we're
So, actually, we need to replace that. What does it take?
What was the usual name? It's the name. Like, thank you.
Sorry, Bruce.
We want to make sure that we're all getting
Well, we
to
definitely want all the, see, they've only got.
Yeah, so we've got local health.
Yeah, that's true as well. But there's also.
And then this one.
Mate, so,
What do we say?
what about MSD? MSD is at least engaging with the police. Volunteer.
Signed up for the.
I'm just saying, so.
This one? That's me. It says.
Because we want to charge, for example, property owners.
One over there.
It's still possible.
I've written it.
Yeah, it's not so much who you're engaging with, right? It's not so much who you're engaging with. It's the theme. It's like we know how to engage in living and working. So what other things might be this might like we talked, there's going to be rates review, right? So we'll be engaging on rates reviews. What are the themes? Yeah, as opposed to those are people, but those ones that they should be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's always been a lot of these things are done in like 18 months or more. No, but seriously. Yeah, but last time, yeah, we ran out of time. And we really didn't do much. That's right. No, we're doing what we should be doing. But then you said it was more of a continuation, it's different. Yeah, but it's still the same. We know that last time we were light. This is clearly a bigger one, so, you know, but it was we couldn't afford to do a light stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, we need to.
Open to that.
Sometimes you gotta put
We might need staff.
You just got to mix it up.
Is that the same, this stage here?
No, that one, we're doing like consulting on, say, living and working. What other themes might we consult on, just from your understanding? Like, as I said, I gave an example of, we're going to be consulting on rates reviews or something. So there'll be a grouping of that. That's a theme.
Yes.
So there's the other things you might think.
Well, there was a council resolution. Homework stuff, really.
Communication. Theme, communication, get it out all across, not just.
Transparency.
Stop there, oh, mistake there, oh, go over here.
Have you written that up? He found a resolution.
We're discussing.
Themes are not.
Yeah, there was another type.
Yeah.
What are we doing here, Jack? Pretty sure council wasn't a
It's not
resolution.
saying that it's wrong.
No.
Clean up the cost of women.
It's, yeah.
It's the
What's that?
I mean, they want the, yes. That is.
Yeah.
it's,
It's the LGZ does, it's on, it's all of government.
And they said, well, I can't. But this was stuff.
just a position.
I'm not a good track.
Or wheeler.
I swear.
As I mentioned,
It costs you.
So that's what I do.
Sorted, too easy.
So we're done?
Yep.
you missed.
Sorted. Took me a while, but I then.
Come on, Bruce, have you done your one over there?
Drawing smiley faces on the page.
Oh, you're doing faces?
I don't have to travel to
Oh, that's good. We don't have taxis.
Use a taxi.
Make him hitchhike down.
That's probably the regional council. If they expand, will they become part of the CCR?
Don't know.
Yeah.
I left my,
Department is in.
left the air conditioner on my dog today.
Hey?
My air conditioner on my dog.
Good for your dog.
Yeah. Just gonna look at the reasons why you can't.
Yeah, I think we are.
For some reason, you're gonna generate from this.
Thursday, Michelle.
Thursday.
When New Zealand's not
What's tomorrow?
The easiest thing is stakeholders.
Make sure I'm away these days.
It's hard enough to be able to, I mean, you should throw out some key ones, right?
You're working on it.
I am.
All right.
Yeah.
Heaps to tap on those things.
We get mail
Stage.
Do you get a comment from the CEO to go on it,
It was the
or
wrong move.
does he get off that one? Go straight past.
I think he has one of the.
I need to
Is it right? Or you go for signature or something?
No, I think the only time our double signatures might be on the annual report.
Might be the annual.
Otherwise, it's political.
No. Stop it.
That's true.
Let it.
I'll show you, Joe.
You're not being in
Photo
that
of
sort.
the.
You're not being in that sort. Go and get a course.
Are you trying to get them to adopt it?
That's the one.
Get in.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so just down the bottom.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you.
Change
That's
your
been very good
provider.
so far.
Change your provider.
You'll see Bruce Graham's name mentioned there around the brain power and the elderly. He can be the go-to.
I think we're much better now though. I don't know.
I'll put BG there.
Milton, no, you.
Are we ready, Peter?
Yeah, we are.
Right.
Both is much better
Hit us with it, Peter.
All right.
3 days.
Right.
Go to A&E.
We might reconvene. We're going to do what we did last time pretty well. And essentially we've got really two lots of slides. We'll combine the ones over here about stakeholders. Just going through, you probably got a feel for it. We sort of had three categories. You know, sort of a category where we're all aligned with needing to engage. Major employers is a high one on that one. A development organisation was a high. And tourism were. At the other end of the scale, we had some
differing views about needing to engage on environmental organisations, sort of some mid-order engagement with heritage groups. And I might just, that's probably the sort of theme of where we've got to. We'll put all this together and you can look at it in more detail. On this side, 2 extras came in, which was fed farmers and beef and lamb, which had relatively strong support. Steve, do you have any extra comments?
No, I wouldn't comment.
Good. Over here, in terms of the additional themes to living and working strategy, I've got a comment here. There's only 4 comments. I'll read them out, maybe. Filling our jobs needs to change to growing our jobs. All major employees and businesses. And I'll just leave the others too for you to read.
So I think the summary of that is perhaps there aren't any generated additional themes apart from living and working, but you will get generated themes coming through definitely as we work our way through the LTP program. Infrastructure will be one, those sorts of things. So it'll come through. It's just there isn't anything outstanding out of the ordinary other than what will be produced through the system. So that's fine. We asked the question. We've got that. We've got a little bit of an indicator over here so that we can guide what we should focus on in terms of external agencies. And that's all we need to do, isn't it, Peter, for that?
That's all. And the last thing is to note that we'll bring back a draft engagement strategy to you. That needs to be done sooner rather than later. We'll also, I might mention, there's a new communications manager joining in 4 weeks' time, Natasha Holland, and it'll be a case of engaging both between the policy and strategy, sorry, policy and planning team and the comms team to get that back to you.
I didn't see NZTA on there.
Yeah.
Were they there?
Over there, so
Over there. Oh, is there another one over there?
it's longer than all the other ministries.
Very good. So that you done, Peter, is it?
I'm done.
Please come to the rostrum, Olivia.
Kia ora. With the slideshow, Becky, do I need to point at it or will you move it for me?
You just say, Peter, please.
Oh, okay.
You don't trust Peter.
Great. So the outcomes of sort of this session is ensuring you guys understand the iwi engagement context. So I'll explain that briefly. Also, I'll outline the legal requirements for iwi engagement with the LTP, and then we'll talk about some direction. So I know that we have said previously we're going to get a package to talk together for you guys so that you understand this more, and we actually are currently working on that. In the interim, I thought I'd just explain briefly how the governance structure works. So we've got Ngāi Tahu, so that's for most of the South Island, and then within that we have Papatipu Rūnaka, and there's 18 Rūnaka that make up Ngāi Tahu. So in our area, there's actually 4 that in the Takiwā of the Clutha districts. That's the area of the district. So that's Otako, Moraki, Hokanui, and Awarua. And representing as like an agency above those 4 Rūnaka, Okaha. And so we've talked about before, that's to the north of the river, and that's for generally Otako and some Hokanui. And then we also have Te Marama, and that's generally to the south of the river. And that's for also Hokanui and Awarua. So I've just mentioned that there. And so we tend to, when we're dealing with these sorts of matters, work with Okaha and Te Marama, and at a Rūnaka level, that's more the governance side of things. But a lot of the legislative things we deal with these agencies. And I've just also mentioned here, and if there's any questions at any time, please let me know, that we do have that shared space, which is the Clutha River. And so a lot of the time we consult them with both if it's in that area. Any questions so far? No, cool. So this is in the slides and also in the paper as well, but just pointing out that we are required, and there's lots of different legislation that requires us to do this, to meaningfully engage with Māori. And part of this will be is in the LTP. So that's what we're talking about today. So the engagement that I'm proposing is up here. So it's pretty brief. And the reason for that is we've only just started speaking to Okaha and Te Marama about what our engagement is going to look like for the LTP. I'm mindful as well that they'll have like perhaps 9-10 other councils that they'll be actually working with who we want to do the same thing. So we have to be mindful of resources, but we'll talk to them to make sure that we are undertaking engagement in good faith. That's something really important that we must always do. And that's also in a timely manner, so we'll figure out what the time frames are going to be so that we can make sure they've got sufficient time to look over things. And I've added in there as well that we would need to think about the financial resourcing of this mahi or work. But again, that's something that we'll be talking to Okaha and Te Marama about. So the direction sought is just checking that you're okay in principle with the proposed approach to engagement, and noting as well that there will be more details that have to come out about the level of engagement between Council Kaimahi or staff and Te Marama and Okaha over the next few months.
We just make the point that it'll be within this annual plan process that we are providing some funding, essentially for the resourcing of this work.
So I can add to that. Thank you, Steve. So we do have money set aside for the relationship agreement. So that covers quite a few different components of building our relationship. We need to check still about whether that that financial money that we give basically will be covering the LTP side of things, because there's a lot of other work that we're often doing with the Kaha and Te Marama that money might go towards. So we need to check basically if this is a project that sits within that funding that we already give them, or whether it's actually beyond that and they'll be requesting some more money there.
So we'd be looking for that to come back through staff submission process for decisions in May.
Cool.
Right, because we talk about a couple of months, so we just need to clarify that.
Sure. Yeah.
And bring that back to council at that decision time.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you.
Olivia, do we have any budget set aside for personal development for staff and councillors?
Don't believe so, but
Is it something we should be considering?
We do have a training budget, but that's across the board based on percentage of remuneration.
Right.
Olivia, her group is still working on the whole area of cultural competency, although you've renamed it.
Cultural commitment.
Cultural commitment, yes. And that's elected members and ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And out of that might be a work program that says, hey, this training and development is available, and the work program might need to be resourced, or there might be some funds attached to it, things like that. So that'll come out of the work that you do. At the moment, anything we do is just covered by civic, if it's your side of things, or in terms of council staff, it's the training budget that's tied to remuneration. So we have a certain percentage of remuneration. It's not a big percentage, but 1.5% for corporate training.
Yeah.
And that's how we can apply that, your worship. But I'd like to move it to a planned program that we can all agree to, and that's funded as a result. Through that, still to be done.
Councillor Kennedy, did you have something?
No, I was just going to remind people, Christina has sent you out an email today just to remind you about your safety culture. So that's a good start. So start with that one first.
Yeah. Has everyone completed theirs yet?
She's not going to hound you every 5 seconds like your postmaster, but it's there. Have you got your safety culture?
If you haven't done it, if you pop into my office, you'll see my certificate hanging in the window. Thanks, Sylvia.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Last session, Your Worship.
Last session. Yep, place community plans. Welcome, Mike. Do you stay here all night too, do you, or do you go home occasionally?
It's easier for him now, Your Worship, because he lives closer.
Don't have to commute.
Yes.
Seriously.
So, I guess it's worth noting that, as I've said a couple of times, we haven't really had a chance to get in front of you as a team, but we are doing that. And I guess in that next week, so we haven't had a chance to really give you, for the new councillors in particular, sort of the 101 on our place community plans. And we haven't really included a huge amount of context around all of that, but I guess at the very highest level, we have 10 plans. There's been a huge amount of work gone into the development of those plans, including significant community consultation, starting back in 2017, it was actually before me even, but now we have a full suite, and then now we're really focusing on the implementation of those. So we have a project manager who helps community groups to push those identified projects along. And in attachment there, we've got, I guess, sort of a summary of the number of projects that have been completed, and that is a bit of a moving target because from time to time, groups will come up with new projects, they get added to the list, and then so that might actually push your percentage down, right? But anyway, but you can see that generally, apart from maybe the more recent plans, we're making really good progress. So this report is. Oh, yeah, you could actually talk to the slides. I was just winging it.
I know, but the rest of the council needs to follow you. Yes.
Okay. So, but basically, yeah, the outcome is really that we get, apart from all that background, that we try to get some direction on the future scope of that program as we look to develop the LTP. So, and if we go to the next slide, actually, sorry, my apologies, we do have a little bit of info on that. We can just quickly go through. It's always better with a picture. Thank you, Steve. So our place plan, so that's just a map of the district, shows it's a pretty big place, as you well know, if we can just push forward. But our place objectives of having those 10 plans is really the things that then they have been quite effective on, is about working together. So, and we spend a lot of time building relationships with community groups, and that's a really good avenue to do that. And, next, please. And maximising the value from what we do and also what the community does as well. And we do that by working together. And lastly, it's about, relates back to that living and working. So that amenity part of the tripod, or the third leg that Steve talks about, which is, good reasons to live and work in this district. So,
and I think we shouldn't discount the importance of where our place community plans come, what they play, because until we had those, we had nothing really to focus any actions on the amenity leg, right? And so a lot of other councils can do community planning and things like that are probably a lot more broader than that, but our place community plans were really focused on very much actions associated with improving the well-being and amenity of the communities, and that's what people were able to actually really identify with, because it got down to projects within the community, for example. So really, really important that if we didn't have this, we didn't have these plans, we wouldn't have been progressing that league at all, and that would have been we would have been in trouble, because we wouldn't have been able to make that progress around the growth side and that aspect of retaining and attracting people. Right? So it fell out of living and working. Again, it was just something we pulled together, but pulling together something like that, the evidence is there, how strong that connection is with the community and how well that program has actually gone. You know that because you've been around it, just how important that program, those suite of programs are.
And I think the key thing there is that they get what they want, right, rather than getting what council might give them. They lead it, and you'll know well that yourself.
You're also seeing the smaller communities actively really engaging in the fact that they're donating their own time and energies to it, which is bringing the whole community close together.
Yeah, but also
it's a
close
win-win
to council as well. You know,
yeah.
We can work together. You know, it's really good.
Demonstrates ownership.
Yes. So next slide, please, Peter. So there is, just briefly, there is quite a process to developing the plans from that initial consultation. We collate all the feedback. We develop that into project sheets that are a little bit more technical, a little bit more detailed, and then we have the Our Place plan itself. So there is, as I said, a lot of work goes into developing those. And next slide. So yeah, just in total, there's I did a quick add up, and well over 1,000 survey forms were sent in from around the district, which is, you know, percentage, but it's pretty good. That's over a period of years, but still, over 10,000 feedback items. So that's from conversations, from post-it notes, all sorts of stuff. So it's a huge amount of feedback. And lots of events like the one shown there, up at Tuapeka Mouth. We spent time talking to people, and those are the people, often the people that end up leading these projects as well. So next. By my count, well over 100 projects completed so far, and they range in their scope and complexity from Te Poma, which come out of the original Balclutha Our Place plan, through to some relatively minor ones as well. Stuff we can't always take credit for, like the reduced speed limit in Waihola, but it was in their plan. We were able to lobby for it. NZTA investigated it, and that happened. And so on and so forth. And next, please. So we've talked about that. We've made good progress on all that stuff, and we're continuing to do that. And it just takes time to build momentum and build those relationships. So that's probably a good background. So in terms of the scope for the LTP, what we're basically suggesting, and up for discussion today, your direction, is looking to review all of the plans within the term of the LTP. So that's over the 10 years or within that period, and look to do 1 or 2 of those plans per year. We're looking for your direction on the scale of that review and the level of engagement that we might undertake. So we have already reviewed the Lawrence one, but really that was limited to conversations with the community board. So that was a fairly minor one, but again, how far do you want to go with that? As I say, we've made good progress. We need to go back to the communities and say, well, what's next? We need to resource that review process. So, as I say, a limited review is going to be a lot less resource hungry than something that's more comprehensive. And I guess the last thing is just noting really that we were proposing that review work of the plans themselves, as well as the implementation work that we're currently doing, both of those activities would fall within the community services department, and that just seems to make more sense to me. We have the relationships with those groups already, so it makes that process a bit simpler. And that's the guts of it really. So that's the direction we're after, and happy to take questions, comments.
Mike, how do you feel that you're resourced to actually do the community plans? Like you had 1 or 2 per year there. Like, have you got the time and the resource to do that?
To review them.
Yeah.
Well, it comes down to how deep you want to go with that process. At the moment, we don't have any resource for that. It's previously sat with the policy team. So, but I guess that would be a matter of transferring that. There is, I think it's in the report, there's 10K budget for Balclutha as a starting point.
Well, effectively, you've got 9 to do, haven't you? Because you've done Lawrence.
That would be last. No, there is, I think in the report on page 80, there's a sort of a timeline, is what we were thinking there in the middle of page 80, in terms of what we thought their priority would be. And so up first is Milton Balclutha, Molokai, West Otago, Catlins, Clinton, Waihola, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
5. Yeah, over 5 or 6 years. Lawrence would be last because by that time, after 5, 6 years, then
time to review it. Yeah, so effectively you're looking at 1 per year, perhaps?
1 or 2. We could do that.
But I'll go back to the question: have you got the staff to do it?
Not at the moment, no.
Right. So there's the answer.
Just a question back here. Mike, we're going to be coming up on our 10-year timeframes for reviewing our reserve management plans.
Mm-hmm.
Would it make sense to try and realign those with the community plan engagements? Because we're going to have to be going out to the community and asking them questions about the RMPs. Would that make sense to try and align?
That was always the plan to try and do that, but they have got out of alignment, I guess, in a lot of cases. But I think we would look to do that where we could. Yeah, certainly Balclutha, Milton's just been done, the RMP, so probably wouldn't want to redo that. But Balclutha, yes.
Mind you, Milton's only just actioning its original outplaced plan, right?
Yeah.
In the sense of some of those bigger projects that are just happening now.
Yeah.
I think
see how it goes. Yeah, exactly. I think you'd love to do that as much as you could. Yeah.
It would make sense just to tie our resources together. Like the priority that you might have suggested perhaps needs to be re-looked against the RMPs, because that would be the most efficient way of doing it, given that a lot of the actions are associated with reserves anyway. Some of the actions not yet completed, like say Balclutha is about reserves as well. So I think if we're trying to find the best way to resource it, that would be the case. We've just increased resources into the Donna's area and that for this sort of work too. And I think we just need to look at if we simply said Mike's department would be responsible, then he hasn't got the resources. But if we look at it a little bit differently around the reserve management plan and attach it to, then we might not be needing the same level of resources for that. And if we're a bit smarter about managing it that way, because the problem is the reserve management plans do it in 2 stages, 2 phases. And so it's just which one we attach it to. But we've got a consultation process twice for reserve management plans. So we already have to resource for that. We have to deliver that. So if we tag team it, then it's got to be the more efficient way. It doesn't require separate resources.
I guess I would say that if you agree with that proposed sequence of community plans, that seems to be, to me, that reflects the need to do that. Then you would, the next question would be, should we also review the RMP as part of that? In some cases, the answer is absolutely. In some cases, you might say, look, we actually have a fit for purpose RMP. It's only 2 or 3 years old. We probably don't really need to do a full review. So.
Going back to the projects, Mike, we're close to 100 done. How many were there in total?
Well, as I say, the number changes as the extras get brought in. But I think I've got 160 odd that I've got identified as clear projects.
We've still got some underway.
Yep.
So for that obviously there was some original budgeting. Is that still available? Like, was that in our annual plan that's been carried forward, or?
That's a complicated question.
It is.
So
no.
Upon adoption of some of the more recent plans, there has been funding allocated, and we use that as generally pretty small amounts from the reserve, what do you call it, investment fund surplus generally. Other projects like Milton Main Street, which is fits within the plan, obviously they are capital projects that are completely outside of our control. So
the reason I ask that is because some of the smaller communities, but when we did this and this, wasn't there a pot of money? There's a conception.
But the funding principle around the community plan process was part of those were funded from the investment fund, right? And so that's how in fact, that's one of the reasons why we set up the process for that, is to use discretionary funding, not rate funding, for community projects, community plan projects, where we could, and use that 50-50 labour and other third-party funding. But those 60 projects, like one of the issues will be if we haven't done them now for some of these things, particularly Balclutha, that's why you need to review them to ask actually is it still valid now? You might be able to take some off the box if they're not valid, for example, and put new ones in if you needed to, which is why they need to be re-looked at.
So the 100 is done. There's probably, I haven't done a count up, it's probably 20, 30 or so that are well on their way. And it probably, another 2 or 3 that no progress. But people keep coming up with new ideas and that fit within the plan. So that it's okay. We can look to support those and we help them find funding as best we can, whether that's through an annual plan submission or.
So like Sawmill Creek Reserve, was that on the original?
Which one, sorry?
Over at Torrey Mouth, where the Sawmill Creek, like Jace has managed to do a lot of the funding. That's just sort of an extension of what the original was, isn't it?
Well, it's in the plan, it's in the community plan. There's some council funding. He's found additional funding, so that's pretty typical. How they pan out.
Good question from down the back there, though, Jules. That's good. Mike, it'd be interesting to see, out of all those ones that have been completed, what do you reckon the value of them would have been?
We did a report on that.
Well, just roughly a combined value.
I think, what was it? Got a score. I think $30 million. Of council funding. That includes some fairly chunky ones. And another at least about that 35 mil external funding.
See, that's a bloody good story. That's a success story that we haven't told our communities. We need to work on that. That's a really good success story. But then once again, while everyone's going to sleep, I can see it and I'm feeling it too. But that's ownership, isn't it? Like that's owning your communities. Really, really good demonstration. Shows you back at Tammy, like you sit beside an emergency officer over there, waiting for you to drop. Looking a bit grey. But no, that's really impressive. 30 million from the council and
another more lease match, and that's just funding. That doesn't capture all of the work, all the other stuff, volunteer stuff,
and the hours and all that. Have you got a bit of a report on that? I'd love to have that.
I think it was part of the when we were justifying things, wasn't it? Was it in that report?
I'll dig it out and I'll resend it.
We have to do that daily in this organisation, just to show ourselves.
What it shows is a really good community council partnership model that really works.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a success story.
Pretty good. 60 mil is not too bad.
In terms of direction for Mike, but given that there's a couple of ways in which we can do this, I mean, I'm assuming that given the value we put to this, that we're not suggesting that we shouldn't be reviewing them. That's one thing. And then secondly, we can do homework around what's the most efficient way of doing it. Try to match up the RMPs or other things and working that out and applying that to the resource requirement in the LTP, and then bringing that back to you as a result. So, does that make sense in terms of that?
Or is there one that we can sort of put out just across all districts? I mean, I can't see a lot being hands putting up in our district once we're nearly ticked off what we're going in. I mean, you can put out there to every community, and they're always going to want, but whether they stand up is another thing after this time round, unless there's another new group of people willing to stand up and do. But
communities will decide that though.
yeah, but if there's just a general one put out, then you may get other groups that decide in an area that, you know, they want to stand up.
Well, as I say in the report, like the prioritisation that we've got is based on one of the things is around the level of engagement that we've had on existing plans from those communities, and in some cases it's not as good as others. So that's okay. That's fine. You know, we're happy to help people who want to be helped. If you don't, then that's okay.
But it's just for the new people out there that, you know, you can come along and ask for that.
Yeah.
But we can do different models, like the Lawrence model was relatively effective for the additional sort of mini review we did. And it may be that because West Otago's nearly at 100% completion, that your review
I don't want any more projects.
will be totally different. Could be totally different, very short compared to, let's say, Balclutha's need to be tidied up a little bit. And we don't have the same groups that you do have in West Otago. So we can look at that. We can look at the connection to the RMPs and how we can make it more effective. We can just look at, here's what we believe is the most efficient, effective way during reviews, pull that back together later in the LTP process.
My recommendation, Mike, is just keep it simple.
Yeah. And really what it is us or council helping communities help themselves. It's really, the effect.
Can't get much more better than that.
So are we right with that, Mike? I know.
You got enough detail, mate? Thank you for that. Thank you for the work you do. It's great. Now that brings that part to a close, but just got slip one little item in.
Sorry, is this still, are we finished?
Oh, yes, yeah. We can close. Thank you, Becky.
Have we heard about a meeting?